fake
Real
background.
So use whatever you can. Oh, look at this.
Guys. Well, so guys, I think we've got a nice small group here. So we were thinking we really want this to be a conversation. So why don't we just cruise around? I can pass the mic and let's just do like a super quick intro of the people we have on the call, and you can just share your name, the company you work for, and your role. So we can get through this quickly. And then Darcy and I have a little bit of an agenda to follow. Just really, we'll give some intros on our background, talk about some of the myths of recycling, the importance of total life cycle analysis, some fundamental materials that you could be looking to be more sustainable, and then how to create an action plan. But we really want this to be a conversation to make sure we can add value to your conversation that you're having at your companies. So feel free to jump in throughout. So I'm going to start with you, Ari.
Sounds good. I just want to let everybody know that our limited edition sweet potato pie is available online only at onceuponafarmorganics.com.
Thanks for the
Jen's grandmother's recipe. Go and find it there. Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Ari Raz. I'm the president and co-founder of Once Upon a Farm, living here in University City. Been in San Diego since 2015. Formerly lived in LA amongst other places. Don't intend on leaving now. So really just happy to see everybody here and continue the growth of our group and our movement.
Great. All right, Julie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie. I am Vice President of Operations at Verity, and I am acting as host today. Happy to be on the board of Naturally San Diego. Most of you I recognize from Coffee and Convos and/or membership committees. So looking forward to today's talk.
Great. Are you Julie Sweet?
Thank you. I'm Julie Sweet, and I lead strategy and creative at Purely Righteous Brands. And I'm particularly interested today because, as you might imagine, just every single one of our clients, both our incubator clients and other clients that we're working on when we're working on innovation pipeline development, are all thinking about packaging solutions. And what we see, and when I worked in-house at Kashi Kellogg's for 12 years, and then in other brands that we've worked with, it's like the P&L gets developed for the product. And then at the very end, it's like, okay, whatever we have left, we'll put towards our sustainable packaging initiatives. And unfortunately, that gets the squeeze, and you never get that step change in, sustainable packaging that we're looking for. So we're working really hard to think about it, the kind of cradle to cradle solutions, and start talking about it and thinking about it at the beginning of the product innovation cycle instead of too far down the tracks.
I think that's a really good point, Julie. I think a big part of this movement is making sustainable packaging solutions affordable. It needs to be in line with what's currently on the market and incentivize all of us to move in that direction. So good point. All right, Amit, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Amit. Run Velocity Snack Brands. Better for you snack roll up. First acquisition was Pop Chips. Glad to be here. It's interesting. I read an article about a month ago about how all plastic recycling is basically a scam, and there is none. And I never would have thought that. It was a really detailed article. I should find it, but it was just like, it's just a scam. Like the numbers on the back, like that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like there's no place for it to go. And it was like truly eye-opening for me. It was not something that I've actually, and I'm being honest about it, like I never really thought of, like we put stuff in the right containers, but like,
yeah,
what does that really mean? And so this is, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, that's a good point, Amit. We'll talk about that. I think everyone's been in the same boat. We all think we're relatively intelligent people doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden realize we're doing the wrong thing for years. So it's just about moving forward and not worrying about all the mistakes that we've made, but try to improve. Okay, Nicole, introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm new. I just joined Naturally San Diego. I'm a UC Berkeley graduate from
welcome.
May 2020, so pretty fresh off the boat, and I'm excited to meet you guys.
Great, awesome. So then Allie.
Yeah, my girlfriend actually works with Julie, and she forwarded this on to me. So
Great. Okay.
she's not on the call.
Wait, fiance, correction.
Fiance, yes.
I know I was
Thank you,
mispronouncing
Julie.
the name.
Yeah, I didn't realize I would be logging in under a name. I saw that. But my
that's
name is
fine.
Brad Caballero, and I'm a mechanical engineer. I work in the medical device space, and I'm currently studying my master's in sustainability management. And
Very cool.
I'm particularly interested in packaging and circular economy and waste reduction. And being an engineer, I have the skills and the knowledge to be able to bring some of this to light. And working with my girlfriend in the food space, it's always a challenging subject of how do you maintain the properties of packaging for food. And so that's something I'm always interested to learn in. So thank you for having me.
Really cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. We'll get your name right next time. Lizbeth. Then we can try to hustle through
Hi
here so we have
everyone,
enough
my
time.
name is Lizbeth Vega. I'm the founder of Eco-Efficient Strategies, and what we do is to integrate zero waste mindset into an efficient manufacturing operation. So I really focus on reduction and prevention of waste using lean manufacturing practices, and also I have the certification of total resource use and efficiency that really maximizes the use of resources to reduce the environmental impact. So one of the things that my clients always ask when we talk about sustainability or zero waste is about packaging, because I think that's the product that the customer really sees. So I'm very excited to learn more about that.
Oh, great. Cool. Okay, Amy, and then we'll try to cruise through here quickly, guys, since we only have 45 minutes. Amy, you're gonna just share?
Hi, I'm sorry, my camera doesn't work, but this is actually, Amy is our director of marketing over at Organifi. But I'm her assistant, or the product development assistant. She's unable to attend today. So I am going to be taking notes for the team.
Okay, great.
And excited to learn. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, and Katrina?
Hi guys, let me see if I can get this going. I am the new programs manager at Naturally San Diego, so I just wanted to hop in on this call and kind of just see how these types of things go. On top of that, I have always been interested in sustainability, and I think it's something that's obviously very, very important. And I haven't personally found a way for me to like integrate that into what I'm doing in marketing now. So I'm just trying to explore more about sustainability and like where you guys are at in the food industry to kind of figure out maybe the direction I can go. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, and then we think we have Jamie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, got you, Jamie.
Yeah, there I am. Yeah, so my name's Jamie. I've met some of you before, and hello to the people I haven't met yet. I do operations and marketing for a sandal brand out of San Diego. I'm also looking for an opportunity to help in the natural food space, and exploring lots of different ways I could do that potentially. And then my background is in product design, consumer products, including a lot of packaging as well. So I'm interested to be a part of this conversation.
Great. Awesome, Jamie. I'm excited to see you again. All right, Travis, give us a quick intro and then we'll jump in.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Similar to Jamie, met a few of you a couple weeks ago, but also just wanted to hop in on the conversation as well. I'm the founder of Loom. We're a modern wellness brand based here in San Diego. We have a whole collection of collagen and adaptogen infused snacks, all science-based. I've had a few conversations with Lizbeth actually, and it was really great to hear just this movement with sustainability. I definitely want to get more involved, and just wanted to hop in on the call.
Awesome. Well, great. Thanks, Travis. Thanks everybody for joining. And I think I'll jump in now and just give a little bit of background on how I got into the sustainability space, and then let Darcy jump in too. So I actually spent the first 15 years of my career in the medical device space. So bringing products from concept to market that are made out of metal. And it's funny that you've got that medical device background as well. And we got a lot of waste in medical device over the years that you start realizing, and there are a lot of improvements we can make. So I'm excited for you to pioneer those changes in that industry. But I took the segue into the natural product space because I started a natural deodorant company on the side, and we made this beautiful product that was made from these natural ingredients. They were high quality, and we were on the hunt for sustainable packaging, and we're just really surprised at the lack of options when we went to market looking for them. And we were basically given two options: paper tubes that didn't really work with our formula. Our product came through, it was leaky. And then monomaterial plastic. And so at the time we thought, okay, this is great. This will at least get recycled. We felt really good about our decision. Fast forward a few years, then we hear the statistic, similar to you, Amit, that only 9% of plastic is getting recycled. So we start digging in to understand this better, and turns out that number checks out. But we thought, oh, well, our container was intentionally selected to be recyclable. So there's no way this is the case with ours. So we start talking to recycling centers and trying to understand the percentage chance our containers getting recycled, and they were telling us closer to 0. So clearly this was kind of shocking to hear this information. We're as a brand trying to do the right thing, putting the right products into the market that will have a safe end of life, and we were not succeeding. So we started digging in to understand, what is the root cause here? Like, why on earth is this happening? It has the triangles on the bottom, the triangle on the bottom with the arrows, it's got to get recycled, right? So we found that the reality is it's not that these aren't recyclable, there's just no market for these products. There's not a buyer for this plastic from the recycling center. So when we dug in to talk to these recycling centers and asked them, well, what is valuable in the recycling chain? They told us metals. There's a giant scrap metal industry. They always have a buyer for aluminum and stainless steel. So that's what we know, right? So we've been bringing products to market that are made out of metal our whole careers. So I went back and made a stainless steel reusable deodorant container for our brand. We then started helping some other friends' brands, making some highly recyclable aluminum containers, and just really digging into expanding that product offering. And that's how Verity was formed, is to be able to create authentically sustainable packaging solution that we could understand what was going to happen at their end of life. And then that led us into a whole other path of understanding the full life cycle of our products, which we'll dig into a little bit later. But I think everyone who's here today is authentically wanting to do the right thing and get some guidance. And it's just a learning journey that we all have to go on together to keep uncovering what's the root cause of all these problems and how can we mitigate at each step of the process to have a more sustainable packaging solution. So Darcy, I'll let you jump in.
Awesome.
Share your background.
Thanks, Kerri. And I want to start by thanking everyone for being here. This is really exciting. Especially during the pandemic, when we can't go to happy hours or other types of networking events, to see folks showing up to build community and learn from each other and meet each other in this virtual platform is really awesome. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Julie, for moderating. Thank you, Kerri, for suggesting this subject. I'm excited to be here with you all. And Ari didn't mention this, but special shout out to Ari, who has been the driving force pushing for the creation of Naturally San Diego for coming on 3 years. Humbled almost to a fault. He would never self-promote, but I think it's really important to say, particularly in a setting like this, thank you, Ari, for pushing to build community. We're doing it, we're showing up. So thanks for your leadership and steadfastness in creating this community. I'm Darcy Shiber-Knowles. I am the Director of Operational Sustainability and Innovation for Dr. Bronner's. Thanks, Amit, for the tease there on the product promo. We are the top-selling natural brand of soap in North America. And folks may not know that we are still family owned and family run and based right here in San Diego County. We do 80% of our manufacturing at our headquarters in Vista. And we are, even though we're a 75-year-old brand, we're growing like crazy with, I would say, startup-like numbers in the last probably 5 to 10 years, and the pandemic, we've seen just amazing growth as well, because soap and hand sanitizer are things folks need right now. So happy to be a part of this community here in San Diego. Thrilled Naturally San Diego is emerging, and glad to be in community with all of you. My relationship to this story of sustainable packaging, you know, I've like most of you probably, I've considered myself an environmentalist for decades, and my own journey of like how to live more sustainably has evolved. You know, you one change at a time, like Kerri was saying, in terms of what we can do as brands or companies, but also just on a personal level, like, you know, you one less this or one more of that to try something new. And I didn't think I would be involved in a sustainable packaging discussion. I'm not an engineer by training, and you know, as someone who identifies as an environmentalist, even the notion of packaging is a little bit distasteful, you could say, right? Like the optimal package is no package at all. So, and yet I find myself again and again coming back to so many of the environmental issues that we face are things that are uncomfortable, and the reasons that we are facing these issues on our planet is because for hundreds of years we've, you know, turned the other way. We've done what's convenient. So having these uncomfortable conversations is really critical. I was at I don't know if any of you have been to Sustainable Brands, the conference. But I attended Sustainable Brands last year in the summer, back when we could go to conferences in person. And there was a lot of discussion at Sustainable Brands around plastic. And the loudest voices in the conversation were from folks representing Dow and ExxonMobil and really large brands like PepsiCo and Mars. And the discussion was all around reducing plastic waste from the environment. And I came away from that conference pretty shaken because as brands, it's our responsibility to think about upstream as well as downstream. And in terms of downstream, not just reducing waste, meaning like material that doesn't get recycled, but just reducing material period. So we want to, you know, to Kerri's point, in terms of thinking holistically, the full-on life cycle analysis, what are the feedstocks of our packaging? And then end of life, is there an end of life? Is there a market? And is there reusability? So not only is there a lack of buyer's market for reused or recycled plastic, plastic itself can only be recycled 2 to 3 times maximum before it has to get downgraded. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has an amazing set of resources. I want to flag for folks the New Plastic Economy. That's where a lot of the good research is coming out of. And Amit, to your point about, I think it was the New York Times expose about plastic that recently came out. There's a film called The Story of Plastic that also chronicles how we've sort of been taught to think that we can recycle our way out of this plastic problem. But in the year and a half since the Sustainable Brands event, Dr. Bronner has taken a really hard look at our plastic use in particular and made some new commitments. Mike Bronner, our president, said recently that the plastic problem that our planet is facing is the greatest existential threat to Dr. Bronner's in the near term. So we know it's critical from a business standpoint and from a moral standpoint and from an environmental standpoint. And we can't do it alone. These problems are intractable, and the linear consumption economy that we all live in means we've got to collaborate. So that's my intro. And again, just thrilled to be here because of the collaboration that is so critical and the community that is so delightful.
Well, and also I think it's important just to recognize how much Dr. Bronner has done has been being a leader and a pioneer in the space to really bring attention. I mean, to be promoting documentaries and sharing this information and understanding that even if we're using plastic in our brands, like we've all been using plastic. We all use it every day. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. We have to just recognize what can do to get better. And I think Dr. Bronner has been a really great example of that in the community. So thanks, Darcy, for leading that effort over there. And I know we had talked about Let's just get into the myth of recycling a little bit, because I mean, I think I gave a little intro to that in my discovery of understanding that there's just no market for recycling. And I think it's important to dig in to really understand when you're picking your materials is it's really simple. It's economics, right? Like if there's a value for this material at the end of the recycling process, you can look at any material and make that same assessment, then that's can be a good place to start with the material that you're using if there's going to be a value to it at end of life. The other thing is there are automated equipment systems in a lot of these MRFs that will pick up the highly valuable materials, right? So working with materials that already are getting pulled off of the line in a MRF is a good place to start versus trying to create new materials that then have to have a recycling process to catch up to it. So that's personally where we have started. And I think glass is another one, Darcy, that we can talk about a lot too, as being a great material to start. But Darcy, did you want to dig in a little bit more to talk about that myth and what you've uncovered?
Sure. Just for a couple minutes, because I think discussion is really where it's at. But yeah, based on research that I'm looking at coming out of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and then there's a report that was also published. I'm going to look up the name of the report here right now. So Geyer et al. And I'll put that in the chat in a moment. So globally, plastic production is increasing, and that's across all industries. And yet, plastic by its very nature, and plastic is miraculous. It's incredibly useful, and it's just a wonderful material. It has a ton of helpful uses, but the problem is that it cannot actually be recycled more than 2 to 3 times, because after that, the quality of the polymer bonds is too low to be functionally used in the same way again. And so the fate of it ultimately, even if it was optimally recycled, those 2 to 3 times, it ultimately becomes landfill or some sort of composite ingredient for construction materials. So there's that piece of it. And then there's the piece of it that globally only, let's see what the stat is here, only 14% of plastic each year is actually collected. And of that 14%, 4% becomes losses in production. 8% is cascaded or downgraded. And so it's really only 2% of plastic each year globally that becomes new plastic.
Wow. And
part of that is because so many types of materials are multi-material. Like on our label right here, like this bottle is 100% post-consumer recycled PET, single material, probably just recycled once. This cap is virgin polypropylene. There's a little liner here that's mixed material. And then the label is biaxially oriented polypropylene with substrates, multi-layer, and an adhesive. So the label itself is mixed material, can't be recycled ever. This is too small format because of infrastructure limitations. And then even the bottle, which is optimal for recycling, can only be recycled 2 to 3 times. So you have a material mixing problem, you have a small format problem, and you've got a material reality problem, and then you have a market problem that Kerri brought up. So we have been marketed since the 70s to believe that recycling is the responsible thing to do, the good thing to do, and it's just not true. So where do we go from here?
I think that's a good tidbit too, Darcy, that a lot of brands aren't aware of. It certainly was news to me when we went down this journey that the size is important of how big the piece is, because during the first step in the sorting process at the MRF, these items are getting sifted, and essentially anything, I've heard experts use different numbers between 1.5 and 2.5 inches being the smallest on one side, but essentially anything that's smaller than the palm of your hand is going to fall through that process. So even if you're choosing the right material, it's likely not making it through the recycling process. So there are all these important things to really understand about the recycling system in itself and how it works. And by breaking that down, it makes it easier to select the right materials. And then great point, Darcy, on just the viability of the different types of plastics that we're using and making sure. I think Bronner does a really great job, and you've done a really great job of picking PCR material, so you know that it's at least been through the recycling process once. But the sad part is virgin plastic is so cheap. I mean, it's essentially free, right? So to be able to melt this down and turn it into something else that's going to be downcycled, it's cheaper just to get a virgin plastic that's going to perform better. So there are a lot of things working against us in actually making these plastics turn into something new. That's why it's only 2%. It's the quality getting compromised, and then also just there being no market for it, and the economics only work.
Well, and partly why it's so cheap is that we've externalized the costs for the people and the planet, people working in the global south, and where most of the plastic waste is going, and the planet in terms of the ocean, in terms of carbon emissions, and heavy subsidies for the oil and gas industry. Plastic is a petroleum-based product, and you know, as fossil fuels for transportation are decreasing, the oil and gas industry is actually increasing their marketing of plastic. So yeah, a price on carbon would go a long way. Just a political plug there. And there is talk in for next year, there will be legislation proposed in February, I think a bipartisan bill for a price on carbon. Not sure how effective that will be, but if you're interested, there are a couple different groups working on that. Series, CERES is a great lobbying organization that works with businesses who are interested in environmental lobbying. So that's one of the bills they're tracking.
The one other thing I saw here at Darcy we noted to talk about was compostables. Do you want to jump in and share a little bit about your thoughts on compostable materials?
Yeah,
I know it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's controversial because there lacks infrastructure and for properly receiving and handling compostable plastics, and so they're not recyclable, which means they contaminate the recycling stream. But it's the direction we need to move in, and so we need a kind of a hybrid solution. One of the things that we're really excited about is a ballot initiative in California that will be on the ballot in 2022. We just qualified, and Verity signed on, as well as Bronner's, in support of this initiative. And so it will go to vote in the fall. We are expecting fall of 2022. We're expecting heavy opposition from the oil and gas industry, but the public wants this. And if it passes, it would eliminate single-use packaging and food service on a tiered timeline. It would ban styrofoam. It would tax, essentially, or it would levy a fee on manufacturers of plastic packaging and brands using that packaging on a tiered system, the details of which would be worked out in the legislative rulemaking process, but where the if you're using compostable material, you pay less or nothing, post-consumer recycled material, recyclable material, and then if it's virgin and non-recyclable, you pay the most. And the money raised from that would go to fund composting and recycling facilities, as well as education, as well as environmental remediation projects around the state of California. So that's a ray of hope for a few years out. But in the meantime, we need to be investing in innovation to develop compostable plastics so that it can go back into the soil, or if it ends up in the ocean, as we know, what is it? 32% of plastic globally each year, the ocean. So, you know, we want it to go away at some point. So we've got to be designing for that. And the technology is really emergent.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of positivity in that space. I think there are some incredible scientists working on more practically, realistically compostable materials. I think there's a lot out there that have been guilty of greenwashing. I don't know that it was intentional. I think a lot of great intentions is where all of this started, but there are a lot of materials that get confused by consumers and thinking they're compostable, that they're gonna just disappear in their trash cans, and
and they're
it's not
home.
the case, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's important. I think that should go ahead, Julie. Did you have a question about that or a comment?
No, I'm tracking, and we're kind of, as you many times these compostable packaging options end up being kind of too good to be true. Like the world's not built for it. It's like you can toss it in your home compost bin and anything's going to happen to it. But one of the things we've been tracking is more of the bioplastic front. I'm just curious what you guys know about that space. And we are thinking that's really promising, but would love to hear what you've uncovered there, if it's sort of running into some of the same issues.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that. I think bioplastics, this is a personal opinion, but bioplastics are, less bad than petroleum plastics, but it's still new plastic that has the same end of life problems that petroleum-based plastics have currently. So there is some research happening around bio-based compostable plastics that's pretty exciting, and perhaps those biomaterials could be grown in a way that was even regenerative. So you're sequestering carbon in the soil, in the production of the hemp or sugarcane or beets or potatoes or whatever it is that you're going to make the plastic out of. Braskem is a brand that's gotten a lot of publicity right now. They're making sugarcane based PET and they're marketing it as green E. We actually source some Braskem material for our tubes, and they're a great partner, but the life cycle analysis that they've done on their material doesn't take into account the manufacturing for whatever the end product is. It's just their resin or transport of the material or end of life for that material. So it's I think if you're making a choice between it's all good, it's all better than the status quo, but it's not going to be a panacea. We still have to deal with the infrastructural challenges and the kind of single-use challenges that we face in terms of petroleum products. That's my take. What do you think, Kerri?
Yeah, I think you're right that there are some promising things in the future that we'll be seeing, but unfortunately right now, every expert that I've spoken to has said, look, the chemical structure is still the same. So once it's made into, and I think it was actually a scientist on the sort of plastics that simplified it well. And they're like, look, it's either from a dinosaur or from corn, but in the end, it's the same structure. And once it gets into that structure, it has the same end of life characteristics. So it's really up to the material suppliers and the manufacturers to figure out how to innovate on these materials so that it's more intuitive for someone to find a better end of life. And so I think this is a good time to segue. It's a lot to unpack on this topic. So we're gonna have to have a follow-up series, I think, but let's talk a little bit about life cycle analysis, because I think that's such an important piece of this. Is we're constantly presented with solutions that check one box, right? And there are so many boxes to check to really evaluate how is my product going to make the smallest negative impact on the planet. And CO2 emissions come into this. We're a manufacturer of metal components, so we really dig in there, and we're actually working on some really thorough life cycle analysis studies for our products because we want to understand the total environmental impact. We spent a lot of time talking to industry experts when the company was founded to make sure we were headed in the right direction, and making sure that we weren't just checking one box. And something that we uncovered at that point, there was a study out of the University of Hawaii where the woman now who ran the study is actually at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and she found that plastic is constantly off-gassing methane when it's in the ocean, and methane is 26 times more potent than CO2, right? So we're not just thinking about the CO2 emissions when the container's made or the package is made. We have to think about what's happening, what's the environmental impact and the greenhouse gas impact of life. We also have to think about what are the human health factors that are affected by these materials. And we've learned a lot about plastics creating microplastics as they're tumbling around in the ocean and then getting into our food, air, and water supply. So a whole other piece to unpack. And did you want to jump in, Darcy, with anything there? And it's some more concerns about the total life cycle analysis?
Well, yeah, I think that LCAs are a really useful tool, and also can be a really expensive and time-consuming exercise. And so I would almost advise, if you don't have the budget or staff capacity to consider full-on LCA, just take a kind of life cycle analysis approach to thinking through the materials, and like take an LCA kind of mindset, and you won't have the hard numbers, but you can still make good decisions, thoughtful and strategic decisions responsibly. So we've only begun to scratch the surface in terms of LCAs. We have a couple of things we're looking at doing a formal LCA on, but we haven't actually done it at Bronner's. Instead, we've said, let's think about upstream impacts. What are the feedstocks? How do we maximize PCR material right now? And then downstream, let's think about recyclability, compostability, plastic neutrality, to, pulling plastic out of the ocean. So yeah, I think LCAs have a place, and I'm grateful for them. And also you can get stuck kind of analysis by paralysis, or analysis by paralysis by analysis.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Well, I think we're almost up on time, so I want to see if anybody has some questions to jump in on. I think, Darcy, I think that's a really good point. One thing about LCA is you can also do a lot of work internally, right? You can have your team do a lot of research. The EPA puts out lookup tables where you can actually look on your own, and it's a little bit daunting when you get started. This group's small enough that we can offer, if anybody has questions about it, we can kind of point you in the right direction. But you can have somebody on your team do an internal investigation that will give you some baseline numbers and really help understand where you are. And you can also lean on your suppliers and ask them to give you some of that information as well.
Kerri, you were just, I missed it, but you said you can do some of that analysis on your own. What's the resource that you're using for that?
So the EPA on their website has
just on the EPA
some tools.
Site, yeah.
So they have some tools. So we can send a link as a follow-up. And there's lookup tables where you can actually have your team look up what material you're using, and you can get some great information on just a baseline. So we use that as a starting point. We don't know that all the assumptions are accurate. It actually felt like we made us look better than we actually are. So we dug in deeper, but it's a great place to get started. And Darcy's right, it can be really expensive. So it's not necessary. It's something you can just take a step in that direction and get a baseline, and then make it a multi-year project.
So I'm more tactical. Like what do we brands do? Because I think everyone wants to help. And look, I run 100 million units of bags of potato chips a year. 100 million, right? Like it's all made of plastic, right? It's all made of plastic. Like none of it's, now that I know, like I'm assuming all of it's just garbage. But what can brands like us do? Because I think having a few takeaways would really allow us to sort of start the process.
I think that's a great point, Amit. And Darcy, I'll start, but jump in. I think the key is getting together with your leadership team and making a multi-year plan, right? Like not taking all of this on at once, but to say, okay, within the next 18 months, we're going to have a true understanding of like, what is the impact of our product? Like understanding what is the true recyclability of it, if it's recyclable. And once we understand if that's not possible, then putting a tactical plan in place of, now we have to put a time frame on getting a new material that is, because there are some innovative materials out there that you could be first to market with. Go ahead.
To me, like what Darcy said, and I think it can't be lost, is plastic is an incredible, tool, right? And like we're gonna make a billion vaccines. Those injections are all gonna be made of plastic, right?
Totally, yeah. It's not going away.
There are things that we just can't do, but I'm trying to figure out like, we use as much recycled paper on our corrugate, but like what are the products, and are they at a price point, right? Like at some point too, like all of us are trying to democratize health and wellness for people on the food ingredient perspective, but I couldn't necessarily pay twice as much for my packaging and expect no one else to be able to, if no one else does it, no one else raises their prices, we automatically become at a disadvantage. I think Walmart has actually been a great leader of this, where I don't know if you guys know this, but Walmart is the one that forced retailers to use a concentrated laundry detergent, because what would happen was someone would come out with concentrated laundry detergent and the other guys wouldn't, and the bottle just looked bigger and everyone just bought the bottle that looked bigger. And so Walmart said, forget all of you guys. We're only going to accept concentrated laundry detergent. And all of a sudden, that's the status quo, right? With, and so I'm just trying to understand what is it that we could like. It's great to measure, but I guess I'm like an action guy. Like, who can we go to go find? I mean, obviously, Verity has a type of product, right? But it works in a certain set of situations. Is there a list of suppliers that we could reach out to that we could say, hey, look, here's some use. I can't use it 100% of the time, but maybe there's some opportunities for us to, support that industry.
Yeah, I will
would like to add a comment on that question, because that's one of the big challenges for the food industry. You have the primary packaging that you don't want to transfer any odors or any components to your food. So plastic can be that barrier for oxygen and also to extend the shelf life. So one of the things that has helped a lot, well, not a lot, but I mean, in the meantime that you find a solution. So there's no like one solution that fits everyone. However, you can start educating your consumers to say, okay, I'm using this plastic that has certain characteristics that compare with the previous plastic that we have used that has like this environmental impact reduction. So it's also the conversation and the story that you have with your consumers to understand that there's a challenge. So plastic is not always the bad answer, especially if you can extend the shelf life, if you can have your product with a high quality, with the food safety. That are the main things in the food industry. And in the meantime, as Kerri mentioned, like it's good to understand where you are and where you want to be. So start look at options and really see where's your as it's called situation at the moment. But
Lizbeth, I think you bring up
I have done a lot of research and there's no like right answer for now.
I think you're right. I think especially for the flexible packaging and I'm at like your particular need, it's really important that you're thinking about safety and shelf life, right? As a business is number one. I know Darcy dropped some stuff into the chat that's specifically looking at solving those problems, but I think it's good to take a step back too and just understanding that getting rid of plastic is not the only piece of it, right? So it doesn't have to be the packaging that you look at for your business to become more sustainable. You can look at, the total CO2 emissions of your business for travel, like making cutbacks there, doing offsetting, looking at the factories that you're using for production. Are they solar powered or there are other things? So you don't have to tackle this as the first thing on your sustainability plan, especially if there are no good practical options for your tip specific product. And I think it's to kind of taking a look at the big picture in the life cycle and knowing that, yeah, you as a business, you can't move your product into something that's twice as much next to your competitors that aren't doing that, right? So hopefully over time, and I know you're so well networked in this space too, that you're going to be at the forefront of this. And when those materials are available, you'll be the one to jump on and make it happen. And I think there's such a giant need, and with those resources Darcy showed, there's a lot of attention being paid in that space. So I think there's going to be some really interesting, more cost-effective solutions coming up there. But in the meantime, yeah, if it's not practical for your business, you start somewhere else.
I want to add, I highly recommend Elk Packaging. They're a packaging design and sourcing supplier, and they created the world's first compostable stand-up pouch for alter eco quinoa material or quinoa bags. And the woman that one of the women that worked on that design spun off and created her own consulting design sourcing firm called RCD. So I recommend Elk and RCD for particularly around flexible films like chip bags and stand-up pouches. But Amit, to your point, like there are gonna be categories of plastic that you can't just easily swap out. And I think about like Dr. Bronner's, like we've offered bulk as a service for retailers for 50 years, and consumers don't buy Dr. Bronner's in bulk. And you'd think the Dr. Bronner's consumer would, and they just don't people buy the single-use container. So as an interim, while we are investing in research and alternative materials, we are exploring plastic neutrality. And we're starting with just our virgin plastic. And so plastic neutrality is a third-party certification that's really new. And I'll drop in the chat the names of 3 different service providers that we've interviewed. And this is, it's an interim step. It's not the final solution, because it's essentially like paying for our it's like a self-tax on our plastic usage. So for every kilogram of plastic that we sell, and we're going to start with virgin plastic and see how it goes, an equivalent amount will be collected from the lands and the oceans in the global south in partnership projects that create jobs in those places. And we're going to be looking at creating partnerships near our supply partner projects for our agricultural materials, so that are coastal, Sri Lanka and Ghana and India, to start off, possibly also Samoa. So that is like we're just going to kind of pay our plastic debt, if you will. And we're going to start not with the full company's plastic footprint, but a small piece of it to see how it goes. So that's another way to kind of go about it. If you know that you're not going to be able to make the switch away from plastic right away, and you can't switch to a different type of plastic that would have a better upstream or downstream footprint. Plastic neutrality is an option. And we learned about it actually through a retailer, to your point, Amit, about the role that retailers need to play in pushing this in the way that somebody like Walmart, or I mean, frankly, anyone that sells our products could have that kind of impact. Grove Collaborative, which is a small sustainability focused e-commerce platform, has made the commitment to be plastic neutral this year and plastic free by 2025. And they have then asked all the brands that they sell to pay for plastic neutrality starting this year for the amount that they sell through Grove. So that actually put plastic neutrality on the map for us. We hadn't heard of it before. And again, our take is this is not a long-term solution, but it's a really cool way to kind of take responsibility, extended producer responsibility for what we're putting out there that we know is ending up in the ocean and the lands. So that's another way to think about your journey. And I would add to what Kerri said, that, just pick one thing and do it, because that one thing, whatever it is that is in alignment with your brand, that's the right next step, to quote Frozen 2, which I just watched with my family over Thanksgiving. Do the next right thing.
You guys, I want to be very respectful of everyone's time, so we're going to wrap up here, but I will make sure, if you didn't get all of the notes from the chat, to send it via email to all the registrants with all the links, so that you guys have that availability. And Darcy, if you want to add a couple more, that would be great. I'll let Kerri and Darcy sign off, but thank you from Naturally San Diego for being here.
Okay, guys. And if anybody has questions, I feel like we didn't get a lot of time to discuss, feel free to reach out. We're happy to share from our journeys what we've learned, and if we can offer any advice to help you through yours, or point you in the right direction, or connect you